Africa, a continent with boundless riches where its people fight tirelessly for prosperity yet remain trapped in an unending cycle of war, economic subjugation, and external interference. The Congo, once called the heart of Africa, bleeds once again. The East is on fire as foreign-backed rebels seize control, stripping the land of its wealth while the world watches in silence. Meanwhile, South Africa, the supposed economic giant of the continent, faces blackmail from Washington. The United States threatened to remove South Africa from the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA, an economic chokehold disguised as a gift. Why? Because South Africa dares to pursue independent policies and strengthen ties with BRICS. That's why. The question is the same across the continent. Does Africa control its destiny, or does it merely negotiate its chains? Let's break it down. Now, before we begin, like, comment, subscribe, and I appreciate you following through and watching the video. And I appreciate you watching the video. Welcome to Voice of Akibulan. So, let's begin with the escalating conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Who really controls the DRC, right? Because another generation forced to flee, another set of African lives destroyed. The M23 rebels, allegedly backed by Rwanda, have now seized Goma and Bukavu, two critical cities in eastern DRC. Rwanda denies involvement, but the evidence speaks louder than words. So, for the good in this situation, basically power and control over one of the richest mineral regions in the world. For the people, nothing. The DRC government has called for international intervention, though history shows that the international community only intervenes when it benefits them. We all see the bad in the situation. That Congo's wealth is both the bad. And we know that the bad in this situation is that the Congo's wealth is both its greatest gift and its deadliest curse. This war isn't just about tribe or religion. It's about gold, coltan, tin, and diamond, the very minerals that power Western technology. Rwanda, a small landlocked nation, exports more coltan than it produces. How? By smuggling it from Congo through rebel-controlled territory, right? Multinational corporations profit from this chaos as well, right? They get cheap minerals while Congolese citizens live in misery. The price of your smartphone, right, is paid for in Congolese blood. The hidden agenda in all of this, Rwanda and Uganda have historically served as middlemen for the West, extracting minerals under the cover of war. No, the Rwandan genocide narrative gave Paul Kagame the legitimacy to expand his influence into the DRC, backed by foreign allies. The DRC's instability ensures that it cannot build its own industry, right? Imagine this. Imagine if Congo processed its own minerals and sold the final product rather than raw mineral. It will be an African superpower, right? War keeps Congo weak, foreign businesses rich, and African sovereignties out of reach. So, who benefits, right? Well, for one, we have foreign tech giants who need cheap Congolese mineral, right? Rwandan elites who smuggle and profit from this conflict, and Western nations that keep Africa dependent on their manufactured goods instead of developing local industry. Now, we all know who loses, right? For one, the Congolese people, right? The Congolese people who are refugees in their own land, right? We lose the unity between us African countries and us Africans as neighboring countries fight rather than unite, right? The future of African industries also get affected because they get buried under war and exploitation. Will Congo ever know peace, or will it forever be the battlefield for other nations? Next, let's move to South Africa, where the US threatens South Africa's economy, or threatens South Africa's economic future over a AGOA trade agreement, right? Imagine this. You own a shop, right? You own a shop. You supply goods to a bigger store at a discounted price because they promise to give you business. One day, they tell you that unless you stop talking to certain people, they will take your contract away. That's what the US is allegedly doing to South Africa. No, that is what the US is doing to South Africa. The African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA, allows certain African countries to export goods to the US tariff-free, right? South Africa is one of the biggest beneficiaries, especially in agriculture. But Washington is now threatening to remove South Africa from AGOA over its close ties with BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, with a few allies as well. The good in this is that if South Africa pivots away from the US, it could strengthen its ties with China, Russia, and other BRICS nations. nation, right? This could push South Africa to develop a more independent economic policy rather than relying on Western trade agreements. Now, for the bad, losing AGOA would be a major blow to South Africa's economy, right? Many industries, especially in agriculture, rely on duty-free exports to the US. South Africa's wine, citrus, and beef exports could lose billions, affecting thousands of jobs in South Africa. Look, the US is flexing its economic power, to force South Africa into alignment. This is economic warfare. South Africa has been increasing its economic ties with China and Russia, challenging Western dominance, right? This punishment is meant to scare other African nations from doing the same, right? South Africa's land reform policies have also angered Western powers, and they also want economic leverage to pressure South Africa into submission. Also, Western multinational corporations, which fear Africa developing its own industry. Other African nations are also watching, and this is a warning to those who challenge the US influence. And for those who lose, South African workers lose the most. African economic independence, as it remains tied to economic trade agreements, right? BRIC nations or BRICS ambitions in Africa, also as the US attempts to curb its influence. Let me retake the who loses part. So, who loses, right? For starters, South African workers who may lose their jobs if AGOA is revoked, right? Also, Africa's economic independence, as it remains tied to foreign trade agreements, is gone. We have to stand on our own 2 feet, right? The other hidden agenda is also BRICS. BRICS's ambitions in Africa, as the US attempts to curb its influence, right? With this sanction. The real question is, will South Africa take the hit and pivot to BRICS, or will it fold under US pressure? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm actually eager to know what your thoughts are on this video. The world isn't changing. The players are. And if Africa doesn't take control now, the next century will look like the last. If Africa doesn't take control now, the next century will look just like the last. War, exploitation, and dependency. The question is simple. Will Africa keep negotiating its chains, or will it finally break them?